Let's talk about negotiation. What happens when you desperately need something, but the person selling it holds all the cards? Today, we're not just digging into the global semiconductor shortage, we're going to use it as a masterclass in procurement for a world where sometimes the seller is king.
Yeah, this is the question that kept entire industries up at night. When your supply chain just vanishes and demand goes through the roof, the old playbook gets tossed right out the window. So, really, what do you do when you have zero leverage?
This situation didn't just happen overnight. It was really a perfect storm of market conditions that turned a simple, standard component into one of the biggest, most high stakes challenges in modern business. To really get the stakes here, you just have to look at what runs on these tiny little pieces of silicon. And we're not talking about niche products. We're talking about the engines of the global economy. Your car, your phone, the cloud, national security, and yep, the entire future of AI. Pretty much everything depends on them.
Okay, so here's the crazy part. For a component this critical, you'd think there would be thousands of suppliers, right? Well, the reality is the exact opposite. Making these advanced chips is so incredibly difficult and expensive that it's all concentrated in the hands of just a few global players. That creates what is, for buyers, a classic high-risk sourcing nightmare.
And this slide right here, this is that nightmare scenario all laid out for any procurement team. You've got very few suppliers to pick from, they take forever to deliver, and trying to switch to someone new, it's ridiculously expensive. But the real kicker is that last one, supplier-controlled capacity. The seller, and only the seller, decides who gets chips and who goes home empty-handed. So this power dynamic, it all came to a head during the big shortage. And honestly, no industry felt the pain more than the auto industry. It's just a brutal example of what happens when your negotiation leverage completely evaporates. And the cost? It was absolutely staggering. We're talking billions in lost revenue for the car companies. Entire production lines just ground to a halt. And not because they were missing steel or tires, but because of chips that might only cost a few bucks a piece. The financial hit was just immense. So why did the car makers get hit so hard? Well, they learned a really tough lesson. See, when capacity gets tight, suppliers are going to prioritize their high-margin customers. Think consumer electronics, smartphones, that kind of thing. The automaker's famous just-in-time model, which was designed to be super efficient and keep inventory low, had absolutely no buffer for this kind of crisis. It became clear that supplier priorities, not your contracts, decided who survived. This crisis forced a complete 180. The old playbook of, pushing for discounts and better payment terms, totally useless. The focus shifted like overnight to just one thing, securing access and reserving capacity. Just doing whatever it took to keep the lights on and the business running.
But here's the interesting part. Not everyone was caught flat-footed. Some of the world's biggest tech companies managed to navigate the shortage way more effectively. And by looking at what they did, we can actually see the new rules of procurement taking shape.
This quote just nails it. With a giant like TSMC who pretty much controls the advanced chip market, you can't just bully your way to the front of the line. Your leverage, your power, comes from proving that you are a valuable long-term partner. So how'd they do it? Well, they completely changed the conversation. Instead of haggling over the price of the next order, they made huge, multi-year commitments. They offered to prepay, helped fund new facilities. They were basically co-investing. And in return, they got guaranteed supply and first dibs on the next generation of tech. They weren't just buying a part, they were investing in the supply chain itself. Okay, so for all the companies that got totally burned, the question became, how do we make sure this never, ever happens again? And the answer wasn't to just negotiate harder. It was to fundamentally rethink their entire sourcing strategy and rebuild their leverage from the ground up. And here are the moves they made. First up, diversify. Stop relying on any one supplier or any one country. Second, redesign your products to be more flexible so you can use different chips that might be more available. Third, build up a buffer. That means ditching strict just-in-time for the really critical stuff and building a safety stock. And finally, partner up. Adopt that big tech playbook and use long-term deals to lock in your supply for good. All right, so this entire crisis has basically rewritten the rulebook for procurement. Let's boil it all down to the core lessons that honestly apply to any industry that's dealing with a powerful, concentrated supply base. Lesson number one, and it's a big one. When a critical part becomes scarce, the one who makes it holds all the power. Price becomes almost irrelevant. Access is everything. And the second crucial point is all about timing. You cannot wait for a crisis to start building leverage. By then, it's way too late. All that hard work, the partnerships, the diversification, the long-term contracts, that has to be done when things are calm.
And lesson 3 really brings it all home. In a seller's market, money isn't always the most powerful language you can speak. A real commitment, a true strategic partnership, can open doors that just throwing cash around will only slam shut. This right here, this is the key financial takeaway for every single executive out there. Building a resilient supply chain, with extra inventory and more suppliers, yeah, it has a cost. But that cost is nothing compared to the cost of a multi-billion-dollar disruption. It's an insurance policy. So, to wrap it all up, the semiconductor wars have taught us that the role of procurement has really evolved. It's no longer just a department for saving costs. It's a strategic pillar of the business, one that's built on foresight and deep, meaningful supplier partnerships. And that brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. Think about your own business, your own supply chain. Find that one component, that one material that you absolutely cannot live without, and then ask yourself this really critical question. Who truly controls its supply? And what are you doing about it?